This week, ladies and gentlemen, we remember the countless American patriots who have lost everything, including their lives, for the sake of our freedom, for the sake of our country. Just like the men who signed the Declaration of Independence, who pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor for this country, for our freedom. Hundreds of thousands of people have paid the ultimate price so that we could be free today. And so we honor them today, and we actually dedicate this episode to them. But in honor of their sacrifice, we need to realize that we also need to be involved in defending them, yes, but also our liberty, our country, our sovereignty. And of course, the first step is education, which is what we hope to do with this show. So in the news today, we've got a lot of critical news, including the hearing about COVID-19 in the U.S. Senate that you probably didn't hear much about because the lying fake media is complicit. The loss by Thomas Massie in this election. What does it mean for the MAGA movement? And of course, the latest from the UN. Their General Assembly just passed a hugely significant resolution through the General Assembly about climate change and the supposed obligations and duties of governments to get involved in the jihad against CO2 emissions. Also, later in the show, we have the great Colonel Chris Wyatt joining us. He has an incredible knowledge of Africa, probably the most knowledgeable person anywhere about the Afrikaner refugee program, which is what we'll be talking about today. We also have a very special guest joining us to discuss what happens with foster care children when they age out of the system. It is absolutely catastrophic. And so Ariel Kraft, program director for Don't Go Alone, is going to be joining us on that to talk about how you can get involved if you feel moved to do so. So our word from the word today, this comes out of John chapter 15, verse 13. Very appropriate considering that it is Memorial Day or week if you're listening to us later in the week on the radio. John 15, verse 13 says, "Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends." And folks, a lot of American patriots have laid down their lives for us. And so let's always keep them in mind, especially this week. Their sacrifices, their families, in many cases, lost loved ones. And we must never lose sight of that. Before we get into our news segment, I want to tell you about our friends at Mark 37. You know, if you know me, you know that for pretty much since smartphones were invented, I never had one. Always avoided them. Instead, I had my little flip phone, which I still have here. Don't use it anymore now. But I found out about this company, Mark 37, that produces ghost phones. And I thought, you know what? Got to try one. It is specifically designed and engineered with your privacy in mind. It uses an open source privacy-focused operating system called Graphene OS. And you know as well as I do that the government and the big tech companies are logging every single thing we do, every movement, every like on a Facebook post, all of it is being harvested from our phones and going off into the netherworld to be processed by artificial intelligence and to go into your file for your future social credit score system. So I'm not going to be participating in that. That's why I decided to try this ghost phone. And I'll tell you what, I'm absolutely loving it. And obviously, it's just a piece of equipment. The equipment itself is not going to protect your privacy or make you free, but it's part of a journey. And I want to encourage you to sign up for their free webinar, mark37.com/liberty. You can register for the free webinar and find out what it takes to reclaim your privacy and your digital life. I do believe, folks, that this is essential. The AI monster is gobbling up more and more of our data, and if we're not careful, it's going to know more about us than we know about ourselves. Also, our friends over at 4RBs, folks, you know, we're not all beekeepers. I hope to become a beekeeper one of these days. I got family who keeps bees. The reality is something huge is happening. Something terrible is happening. Beekeepers are reporting losses of over 70% of their colonies, folks. And without bees, we get no food, right? Bees are the ones that pollinate our crops so that we can have food in our bellies. But now there's a new peer-reviewed published study showing stronger, healthier hives using a technology called the Pure Wave Cell. It's incredible. We have partnered with this company now to help make people aware of this. And you can also buy these for yourself, for your pets, for your colonies if you have them. And you can also buy honey produced by colonies that are using these. It's really, really fascinating research. The research is showing that when you restore stability to the environment, you know, all these frequencies and waves, the bees start regaining their strength and balance naturally. So bees are obviously really sensitive. What affects them is affecting us too. It's just, you know, hits the bees first. But we need to be asking asking what's going on here. We need to be finding out what we can do to help. So I encourage you, go over to the website, 4rbs.com, 4rbs.com. And if you use this promo code, it's Hive20, Hive 20, Hive20. You're going to get a 20% discount on whatever you purchase there. So get over to 4rbs.com, 4rbs.com, and check it out. Use that promo code Hive20. Now, for our news segment, the great Andrew Muller will be joining us. He is, of course, Chief of Operations here at Liberty Sentinel Media, also writes regularly for The New American, where I serve as senior editor. Andrew took off last week, had important things to do, but he's back with us. Andrew, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, Alex. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. All right, folks. So obviously Memorial Day is important for a lot of reasons. It's important for our country, of course, and we need to always be mindful of this. Memorials are also important in scriptures. If you go to Exodus 12, you see the Lord telling Moses, "Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house. Your lamb shall be without blemish, and ye shall keep it up until the 14th day, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the side, two side posts, and on the upper doorposts of the houses. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, execute judgment, and when I see blood, I will pass over you. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial throughout your generations, an ordinance forever." Memorial is also mentioned in Joshua chapter 4. When all the people were clean, passed over Jordan, Joshua called the 12 men out of every tribe. Joshua said unto them, "Pass over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and take ye up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What mean ye by these stones? Then ye shall answer them, that the waters of Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, when it passed over the Jordan, and these stones shall be a memorial unto the children of Israel forever." Folks, memorials are important. And in his Memorial Day address on May 31st in 1923, President Calvin Coolidge said something important. He said, "Settlers came here from mixed motives. Generally defined, they were seeking a broader freedom. They were intent upon establishing a Christian commonwealth in accordance with the principle of self-government. It has been said that God sifted the nations that he might send choice grain into the wilderness." Concluding in his Memorial Day address that America's republic is worth preserving, President Coolidge continued, he said, "They had a genius for organized society on the foundations of piety, righteousness, liberty, and obedience to the law. Who can fail to see in the hand of destiny? Who can doubt that it has been guided by a divine providence?" We have Douglas MacArthur telling West Point graduates in 1962, he says, "The soldier, above all other men, is required to practice the greatest act of religious training, sacrifice. In battle and in the face of danger and death, he discloses those divine attributes which his Maker gave when he created man in his own image. No physical courage and no brute instinct can take the place of divine help, which alone can sustain him. However horrible the incidents of war may be, the soldier who is called upon to offer and to give his life for his country is the noblest development of mankind." And so today we honor our soldiers. Andrew, your thoughts on Memorial Day? What are you going to be doing to honor our soldiers?
Well, first of all, praying and thanking God for his divine providence in our nation, recognizing that ultimately sacrifice is the whole reason we're even alive as a country and as individuals in Christ, that Christ gave his son as a sacrifice for the propitiation of our sins. And that's the ultimate memorial. And then we're grateful that in our country, we have men and women who have died to preserve our liberties and preserve our freedom. So I will be spending it with family and friends, being thankful for their sacrifice, but also renewing my resolve to be involved in my country so that that sacrifice is not in vain.
Yeah, that's such an important point right there, folks. If we allow our freedoms to disappear, if we allow our nation to be subsumed into this global, technocratic, monstrous, globalist machine that these evildoers are trying to build, then we basically say to the families of all these soldiers who gave their lives for our freedom, wasn't worth it. We're too busy watching football. We don't have time to get involved. We don't have time to pass on our country to our heirs. Really, really terrible. But folks, we need to, as part of honoring those who gave their lives for our country, we need to get involved too. And not all of us necessarily need to join the military, but all of us do necessarily need to play some role in passing on our country to the next generation. Speaking of passing on our country to the next generation, I saw this 1976 ad for Coca-Cola, and we don't normally air Coca-Cola ads unpaid, but it's just fascinating to me because this is 1976. I mean, it's not that long ago. We're talking about 50 years ago, and I saw analysts describing this as like appearing to be like a foreign country, and this happened in the span of 50 years. Some of our viewers still remember the days when this ad ran on television. Let's roll that clip.
Coke gets life. Everybody wants a little life. Coke gets life. It's everything that makes you living nice. Coca-Cola, keep the sun shining down on your parade. Coca-Cola, feed your drum now, sing my song. Coca-Cola, moves it along. Coke gets life.
Man, that's sad. And, I still have vague memories of that America. I wasn't born in 1976, Andrew. I know you certainly weren't either. But, man, it's sad to see what we have lost in this country already. And, again, it's Memorial Day. If we don't get involved, those historic memories of our country will be nothing but memories, and that's totally unacceptable. Now, one of the big things that was used to transform our society, or at least attempted to, was the COVID scamdemic, plandemic, whatever you want to call it. And I'm grateful that we're finally getting some real movement on this. There was just a major Senate hearing. We wanted to talk about it last week, but there just wasn't time for the news segment, so we'll do it this week. Senator Rand Paul, Senator Ron Johnson, really the two stars in the U.S. Congress when it comes to hitting on these issues, hosted this hearing. And I want you to hear Senator Paul talking about the secrecy, the children suffering as a result of this, the small businesses destroyed. I mean, just terrible. But let's listen to Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky.
The cover-up is not just about protecting one research grant, it's about protecting an entire network of labs, grants, intermediaries, and bureaucratic architecture quietly engineered to outlast any moratorium, any congressional inquiry, and any election. After millions died, children lost years of learning, small businesses were destroyed, civil liberties were restricted, and dissenting Americans were censored and smeared. The government owes its people the evidence. Our witness is testifying publicly today at great personal risk. He and other brave whistleblowers have come forward because the truth was being buried, because government secrecy cannot become government impunity. I want to acknowledge the Trump administration officials who made good on their commitment to transparency and cooperated with this investigation. Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy, Director of NIH, Jay Bhattacharya, Director of the National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and former Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, they set a standard. I expect the rest of the administration to meet it. We owe the American people a complete record. We owe every family harmed by this pandemic a government that does not hide behind secrecy, conflicts, and curated science when the stakes are life and death in public, starting today.
Kudos to Senator Rand Paul. Now, one of the things they did at this hearing was they invited in a whistleblower from the Central Intelligence Agency who had incredible bombshell testimony on this COVID-19 scandal. This is a 20-year veteran of the CIA. He's still employed by the agency. His name is James Erdman III, and he testified under oath before Senator Rand Paul and others confirmed what we've already known for years. The intelligence community knew that COVID came out of a lab in 2020, but they buried it, and Dr. Fauci are the ones who helped make that happen. Obviously, if Americans had known all of this, then we would have had a very different response to this so-called pandemic. But I want you to listen. It's a long testimony that he had, but I want you to listen to this little excerpt of it that I just thought was key.
Intelligence community leaders and senior analysts downplayed the possibility that the COVID pandemic originated as a result of a lab incident. Motives are difficult to define given the scope of the Diggs review. Intentional or not, the IC's actions resulted in a cover-up, wasted resources, and a failure to properly inform policymakers. Public health policy would have been very different had the American public been made aware that a virus from a lab in China was going to serve as the foundation for an emergency use authorization mRNA products, being mandated by the former administration.
Yes, indeed. And by the way, there's still nobody in jail for all this. Just throwing that out there, just reminding you. Now, Senator Ron Johnson, Republican of Wisconsin, slammed the deep state and the fake media. I want you to listen to this.
I need the mainstream media, CBS, ABC, CNN, to step forward and start covering what is a major scandal. How many thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of people are permanently disabled or possibly lost their life because our FDA hid the fact that there were safety signals screaming at them with the COVID injection. So again, you can't answer all my questions in terms of but we need to figure out who is running this deep state.
Who is running this deep state? That's a good question. And I suspect Senator Ron Johnson has a pretty good idea. In fact, I've done events with him, and he's a great senator. I'm just so grateful for people like Senator Ron Johnson in the Senate. But I've got a book coming out just within the next week or two, Deep State 2.0, where we're going to answer that very question. Just who is running this deep state? And sneak preview, they've got a commander-in-chief. His name is Satan. Probably heard of him. But even more specific than that, there's a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals that you need to know about that, unfortunately, the lying propagandists that Senator Johnson was just talking about, masquerading as news media, will never, ever tell you because they're part of it, obviously. Now, Andrew, before we move on to the next big news item, it's incredible to me that there's still nobody in jail. I mean, yeah, they got an indictment now against one of Fauci's top minions, but how can it be that nobody's in jail yet? This is crazy.
I think a big part of it is because the people who hold the reins of power, who can actually imprison these people, are in on the conspiracy themselves. That's an unfortunate reality behind it. And there's a American comedian, Owen Benjamin. I don't agree with everything he said, but he had a great quip that he put out this past week. And he said, those who say conspiracy theory and label us as nuts are the conspirators themselves. And that's always so true, that the people who are protecting the Epstein class, who are protecting the COVID criminals, they themselves have some sort of skin in the game, or they have friends who have skin in the game, or donors who have skin in the game. So I think that's why we're not seeing accountability. That's why we need to have a complete overhaul of our government through elections and peaceful means of getting actual constitutionalists in office who are not beholden to this Epstein class, to this Anthony Fauci class, who will actually bring the justice we all desire.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. But speaking of elections, I've got some real questions about this alleged election in Kentucky. I'm hoping they'll do an audit, but there's a lot of really, really suspicious things here. Massive increase in turnout. Almost all of it went to the opponent, who nobody had ever heard of before, an empty suit named Ed Gallerin. I've seen multiple AI systems now, when given this information, say the chances of this happening are pretty close to zero. But obviously, we're talking about Congressman Thomas Massie, who just lost the most expensive primary in the history of our country, the most expensive House primary in the history of our country. And I want to go over a couple of things. I want to share some of the comments that he made during his concession speech, a little bit from his first big interview after the alleged loss. But I want to first start with some of the accusations. Andrew, you broke a major exclusive. We talked about it a little bit a couple weeks ago. This woman who was making accusations against him, that the narrative suddenly became that he was a pervert, that he was a sexual abuser. Of course, she told us on record that that wasn't true, right? He wasn't a pervert. He wasn't sexually or physically abusing her. So that narrative was debunked, but of course that didn't get out there. We also have this narrative that he's somehow anti-Semitic, that he somehow doesn't like Jews. I disagree strongly, and they point to, well, he doesn't want to send foreign aid to the Israeli government. Well, he also doesn't want to send much more foreign aid to all the Islamic governments that are completely surrounding Israel. And nobody says he's anti-Arab or he's anti-Islam. Just for some perspective, folks, the Israeli government gets something like $6 billion in foreign aid from the American taxpayer every year. The Islamic regimes around Israel get significantly more than $20 billion a year. And of course, we don't have money to give away. We're literally borrowing this money from communist China. And so even though it's true that Massie wants to stop foreign aid to Israel, he also wants to strip tens of billions of dollars of aid from the enemies of Israel. And then there's this notion of AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee or whatever, that this is Israel, that they represent Israel. Well, I happen to know a lot of people in Israel, and very devoted Zionists, very devoted Jews, and they will be the first ones to tell you that AIPAC is a betrayer of these people. Very unfortunate. So the idea that AIPAC and a couple of crazy billionaires represent Israel, in my opinion, is rather silly. But that's the narrative. Thomas Massie doesn't want to send foreign aid to Israel, therefore he hates Jews, which I think is a really ludicrous thing. And actually, when I was over in Israel some years ago, I interviewed the deputy speaker of the Knesset, and he was begging for America to stop sending money. It's like, hey, you guys send us money, and then you want to tell us what to do, how we can fight, when we can fight, if we can fight, how we can defend ourselves. Why don't you keep your money? You guys have poor people in America, sleeping on the streets. How can you be sending us money? I think that's fair enough. But let's go to a little reel of some of the highlights from Massie's concession speech compiled by Dissident Media.
For 14 years, those SOBs in Washington tried to buy my vote. They couldn't buy it. They decided to buy the seat, and it got real expensive for them. What was God's purpose? What is he showing us tonight? We're just getting started. I like that. Didn't mean to do this. It started out as an election and it turned into a movement. We stirred up something. There is a yearning in this country for somebody who will vote for principles over party. When they saw the influencers here, they panicked. They sent the Secretary of War here, and you stopped the war for a day. No more wars. No more wars. No more wars. They said you should eat bugs. Do you want to eat bugs?
Yeah, there's a lot more where that came from. It was a very good speech. And now there's talk of him possibly running as an independent, possibly running in the 2028 Republican primary for president. So we'll see. I suspect Massie is not done yet. As he said, we lost an election, but we started a movement. Here's an excerpt from his first major interview after this major election.
Can we expect you to name more names in the coming weeks and months?
Yes. Todd Blanche is violating the law. There's still millions of files they haven't released. We know from talking to the victims' lawyers that their own 302 forms haven't been released. We know that files have been over-redacted. I have released at least 3 names of billionaires who are implicated in this. I don't think it's possible to get to convictions with Todd Blanche at the top and with the FBI director, Kash Patel, at the top, because they've effectively both perjured themselves by saying that there's nobody else in the files. Even Melania doesn't believe that. The First Lady knows that Jeffrey Epstein didn't act alone. And here's the great thing, Kristen. Whether I'm in Congress or not, the Epstein Files Transparency Act is a law, and it goes on for years. So if we can't get this Attorney General and this FBI director to do the right thing, the next ones who take those seats are obligated by law to release the files that these individuals are not releasing now.
Uh-oh. It's not going away. Sorry, Epstein class. But no matter how badly you want this to disappear, no matter how badly you want to call it a Democrat hoax, it's not going anywhere. It's the law. And we're going to get to the bottom of this. We are absolutely we must get to the bottom of this. There's no other option. Andrew, you followed this race pretty closely. What's your takeaway from this race?
Well, I think the takeaway is that Massie and the movement he represents is inevitable. 78.5% of 35 and unders, Alex, voted for Thomas Massie. The youth is on the side of this program of putting America first, putting the Constitution first. So we might lose some of the battles, but I think we win the war on getting back to the Constitution, getting back to Americanism and nationalism. And I will say, Massie announced on Memorial Day, this Monday, that he did file an FEC form for candidacy in 2028 for the House so he can continue to raise money. He said, though he's not particularly running for that seat, this allows him to continue his political ambitions. So I don't think he's going away. The movement's certainly not going away, and the young people are on his side, so I think there's a lot to be happy about.
Yeah, it's true. The data you mentioned about the young people just overwhelmingly supporting Massie. That's not going to go away. And frankly, I don't think AIPAC is doing itself any favors with the posts they put on social media. I mean, you look at the responses there, it's just almost like, maybe I'm being too conspiratorial, but it's almost like they want people to hate them. It's fascinating. But I don't think that's going to work. So we'll see what happens with that. Now, speaking of the deep state And I should mention before we move on to the next topic, we had Massie on just a few weeks ago, and one of the last things he said during that interview, you should go back and watch it. It was mostly about the Epstein class and why they're trying so hard to hide this. He said, if I lose my seat in Congress over this, that's okay. I would do it all over again. And I think that's really one of the big reasons they went after him, is because the Epstein class could not bear the exposure, and they couldn't stand the kid that pointed out that the emperor has no clothes, because it just takes the one and everybody starts like looking around and asking like, oh, can we really say that? Is he really naked? Wow. So I think that really is what's going on here. I don't think it had anything in particular to do with his voting record, or, people were calling him a rhino. Just crazy. Now, let's go to some other big news about the deep state. We've got John Brennan, former head of the CIA, admitting there's a legion of deep state operatives still working within the federal government, within DOJ, within CIA, within FBI, resisting Donald Trump. Let's roll that clip.
Trump says these people are dirty. Todd Blanche says we're lucky to have Trump involved in this. Kash Patel says I have a bat phone into the Oval Office. He has succeeded largely in turning DOJ and the FBI into political arms of his political operation. What still exists in the system to slow that down?
Well, I think, as Liz mentioned, there's still a legion of professionals in the law enforcement environment, the Department of Justice, as well as the CIA and other places, the ones who are refusing to follow politically motivated prosecutions, those who are refusing to support any type of political activities on the part of the Trump administration that are inconsistent with the authorities, the responsibilities of the intelligence community, law enforcement community, and Department of Justice. So we have to rely on these individuals to stand up to their professional responsibilities, and also to the courts, to the judges, to those judges who in fact took an oath of allegiance to the law, not to a political party, not to a person. And, I'd like to think that there are still some members of Congress. Certainly, I'm looking for the Republicans who at one point had spoken out against Donald Trump and had spoken in support of the law.
Now, if Donald Trump had gone on TV and said there's still a legion of deep state bureaucrats within the intelligence and the law enforcement communities trying to stop what we were elected to do, say, oh, what a crazy conspiracy theorist. But when John Brennan does it, that's great, isn't it? Legion of deep state bureaucrats. Well, legion. Maybe it could be cast into a herd of swine. Just throwing it out there. Anyways, big news. The Senate, sneaky Senate, trying to sneak central bank digital currencies back in with an amendment to a housing bill. This comes from Liberty Counsel. They've got this crazy little thing they tried to sneak into. It's in section 1001 in the housing bill that would allow the federal government to impose central bank digital currencies on Americans starting in 2030. So, folks, this is really, really bad news. We need to speak out. Liberty Counsel is urging Americans to call their member of Congress and let them know. Now, big news on the climate front as well. The New York Times has a big op-ed. Forget climate change. Democrats need to talk about other issues. And basically, they're telling Democrats, stop talking about climate change. Focus on regaining your credibility with the working class ahead of the elections. This was written by Matthew Huber. He's a professor at the Department of Geography and the Environment at Syracuse University. But it is hilarious reading. It's like, hey, guys, they don't believe you anymore. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about high energy prices. They don't want to hear your climate nonsense. Doesn't mean we give up on the climate nonsense, but just stop talking about it so that they won't get mad at us. Meanwhile, huge win for the climate fraud at the United Abominations. Last year, we reported on the World International Court of Justice. They like to call it the World Supreme Court. Big, huge ruling where they said that all governments in the world are obligated to fight climate change with lots of vigor, fight CO2 emissions. Well, now the UN General Assembly just voted in a landslide, 141-8, to endorse this outrageous usurpation of power by this kangaroo court. So the Secretary General of the UN, a big-time socialist, Antonio Guterres, says the world's highest court has spoken. Today, the General Assembly has answered. And so there you go, folks. Hand over your money. Hand it over now. And of course, they know Americans don't believe it, so they're going to brainwash your children. Here is the wife of Energy Secretary Chris Wright talking about conspiracy theories in government schools. Listen.
What's a conspiracy theory that you believe in?
I am not a conspiracy theory person. I wouldn't even, unless I say political, and I think conspiracies that the teachers' unions want to keep the students stupid so they can control them and turn them into Democrats. But
That's a good conspiracy theory.
Yeah, folks, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. We've exposed it in 3 books: Woke and Weaponized, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death, Crimes of the Educators. It's all there. By the way, check out our friends at Classical Conversations. I wrote Woke and Weaponized, How Karl Marx Won the Battle for American Education, with my friend Robert Bortons, the CEO of Classical Conversations. They are amazing. That's where I have my own children enrolled for home education. So check it out, classicalconversations.com/LSM. Last but not least, the United States has officially indicted Raul Castro, the dictator of Cuba, for massive criminal charges. He's 94 years old. He faces multiple felony charges, including 4 counts of murder. This just happened a few days ago. And hey, I bet he's not sleeping peacefully at night knowing what happened to his good buddy, Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. So we'll see what happens with that. We shall keep you posted, but we'll be right back after this with our first interview here on the Sentinel Report. Hey guys, Alex Newman here. I want to tell you about a wonderful ministry that is doing incredibly important work. That's Public School Exit. I am very blessed to serve as the volunteer executive director. We've got an incredible team, and our mission is simple. Try to get as many children into the safe sanctuary of Christian education as humanly possible, as quickly as possible. Government schools are no place for children. Children need to learn about God. They need to learn the Word of God. They need real education. They need to learn how to read, write, and do math. And we all know that's not what's happening in the government schools. In fact, what's happening is they're turning our children into revolutionaries, little radicals ready to burn down our churches and our civilization, not to mention our families. So go check it out today, publicschoolexit.com. We've got all kinds of resources for parents, for pastors, for taxpayers, for everybody down the line. And folks, this is one of the most critical battles. So go check out our partners at publicschoolexit.com, publicschoolexit.com. Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. I'm your host, Alex Newman. And folks, there's a massive crisis happening across America that almost nobody knows about, people don't talk about, and that is the children coming out of foster care when they age out are facing catastrophic difficulties. I mean, the numbers are absolutely astounding. 97% of these young people will end up in chronic poverty or worse. 71% of girls will become pregnant within their first year. 81% of the young men who are just aging out of foster care system will go to jail or prison by age 19. Believe it or not, 76% of sex trafficking victims came out of the foster care system. It's astounding how bad this is, the magnitude of this. And there's not a lot of ministries focused on it. So when a mutual friend of mine and our guest reached out and told me about this ministry, I said, we've got to bring these people on. We've got to share their message. So our guest today is Ariel Kraft. She is the program director for Don't Go Alone. And they're doing a lot of really good work. You can find their website at alliancefororphans.org. And it's a brilliant website. That's where I got those numbers from. It's the South Texas Alliance for Orphans, and they're connected with a lot of other ministries. But Ariel Kraft, welcome to the program. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's really, really good to be here.
It's great to have you. So tell us a little bit about this problem that I think very few Americans are thinking about. You know, we know about foster care. We know the conditions there aren't ideal, but when they get out of foster care and suddenly all support stops, it seems to go from bad to worse. And this is an area that you and your husband have specialized in. Talk to us about what's happening.
I think when we think about the fact that, you know, Psalm 68:6 says, like, the Lord places the lonely in families. His intention was for everyone to have the experience of a stable support system within a family unit. And when that family unit is removed from the equation in a young person's life, literally everything falls apart. And for our young adults, they have spent years, most of them the majority of their life, in the foster care system. And the resounding message that they've heard over and over is that they are unwanted. And unfortunately, like, if I could just be candid, and I don't mean to offend anybody, like, that's actually true. Like, nobody wants them. And when they leave care at 18, most of them have some sort of connection to a biological family member, but generally that relationship is unsafe and unstable. And so they're left to navigate that transition to adulthood completely on their own with no resources, very little education, almost no life skills. And most of them are severely underdeveloped mentally, emotionally, and cognitively because of the complex trauma that they've experienced over many years. And so it's next to impossible for them to be successful or thrive because in the absence of relational support, family support, and all of these other gaps that they have, like everything just implodes. So that's
Wow.
it's a little bit of it.
Yeah, and I mean those numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah.
It's absolutely horrific. I mean, we know how tough it is to grow up without a father in the home or without a mother in the home, but here we're talking about children who grew up with neither parent in the home in a system that, in the best of times, is no adequate substitute for parents.
Right.
And I want to show a video that you guys have on your website just so people can kind of get a little snapshot of this, and then we'll come right back.
76% of sex trafficked victims come out of foster care. 45% of the homeless population spent time in foster care. 40% of kids that age out of foster care are going to be incarcerated by the time they're 19, within a year. And so foster care is ground zero, and if we end up wrapping our arms around these children, it's going to have a massive ripple effect on homelessness, on incarceration, and on trafficking. The math works out. If every local church supplied one foster family, we would solve this crisis tomorrow. Jesus hangs out in the mess.
Yeah.
And some of, this is messy, this is difficult, but that's what the gospel calls us to.
Amen.
The gospel moves us towards the mess, and the gospel also sustains us in the mess and strengthens us to carry out the call that God's placed on our lives. We're not all going to do the same thing, but we can all do something.
Very powerful, Ariel. Our church does encourage fostering. We've got families in our church who do fostering. I wish more churches would do this more, but you guys kind of focus on another area. You guys are dealing with the kids who are becoming adults. And as I understand it, you guys partner them with people who actually care to help them navigate this, I guess, transition to adulthood and independence. Talk to us about the program that you guys operate.
Yes. So with Don't Go Alone, we are matching 18 to 25-year-olds who've aged out of foster care with permanent mentoring families. So we are recruiting and equipping families that are stepping forward to say, we will be a lifelong source of support and commitment for a young adult who has aged out. And it's really offering the young adult the chance at this redemptive experience at having a family support. And it's pretty cool because our young adults actually get to choose the family that they're going to be matched with. So we take a lot of time in building profiles and really understanding our young adults and our families because compatibility is really important to us. And then our young adults actually get to choose from those profiles which family they're going to be matched with, which gives back power to them and control and ownership in that process, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I can't believe I never even thought about this as like a need. We know about foster care. We know there's orphans around the world, but like, what about the ones who are transitioning out of the system? So, Ariel, what does that look like? Just say somebody's listening and God puts it on their heart that, hey, maybe that's something for me. What does that look like? What does it involve? How do you mentor? What's the kind of commitment? What do they do?
I always feel like this question is hard for me to answer because it can be so unique based on the young adult and the family. But what I coach our families to how to approach this, I encourage them to think of this as how would you support your own young adult child? If you had launched a young adult out of your home, how would you love them? You would call them frequently, check in on them, invite them obviously to every family function that you were to have. If they needed help with, an application or a job situation, or they needed your advice, you would support them in that, and you would be that listening ear. And so because it's an adult that they're in a relationship with, there certainly are going to be like boundaries and things like that. But we really coach our families to treat their young adult the way that they would treat their own child in that situation.
Wow. And Ariel, we're almost out of time, but how do people learn more if they want to just look into this program that you guys operate?
I would go to don'tgoalone.life if you are outside of the Texas area or the San Antonio area. Our program functions within San Antonio and the Bexar County area. So if you're outside of that and you're interested, go to don'tgoalone.life and you'll find out about the other programs that exist in other parts of the country. If you're in my area in San Antonio, then definitely go to the South Texas Alliance for Orphans.org and you'll find our Don't Go Alone page and all the information that you need there. You can contact me directly and I would be happy to help you in any way I can. No matter where you are, I'll be happy to help you however I can.
Well, Ariel, I'm really grateful for what you guys are doing. Thank you for making time to come on the program today. I hope certain people who are listening and watching will be moved by this. And thank you again for all that you do.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Appreciate you coming on. Folks, this is a Great Commission issue, right? We are commanded, if we truly love the Lord, to go out. And one of the most haunting verses of the whole Bible is when people are coming face to face with Christ, and they want to come in, and he says, "Hey, get away from me! I never knew you." Like, what do you mean? Like, we cast out demons in your name. He says, "Now, when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. Get away from me! I never knew you." And those are some terrifying words. And I'm not suggesting that works are going to save you. They won't. Christ will save you. But we've got an obligation to be the hands and feet of the Lord. This is what Christians have done for thousands of years. And so whatever you're called to do, make sure you're doing it. But in James, we read that true religion is visiting and caring for orphans and widows, right? It's not about how many times per day you pray or how good you are at going to church and things like that. It's about really doing the things that God has called us to do. So stay with us. We're going to be right back in just a moment here on the Sentinel Report.
In the grand tapestry of nature, a delicate balance weaves life's intricate threads. Today, this balance is faltering more and more as bee populations face unprecedented challenges. Without a collective effort to rescue our bees and enhance biodiversity, we're headed for devastation on a global scale. But amidst the chaos, a solution has emerged. A rallying cry echoes, a call to protect these guardians of our food chain. Introducing 4R Bees, a technology-driven organization that is saving bees globally and organically every day. At 4R Bees, we understand the critical role that bees play in maintaining the balance of our ecosystem. Saving the bees is synonymous with saving our planet, and 4R Bees is at the forefront of this mission. Visit 4rbees.com to learn more about how you can save the bees and redefine the course of our future.
Hey everybody, Alex Newman here. I'm here with my friend Colonel Chris Wyatt. He is a longtime military officer. He's retired obviously now, and he's probably the top expert on the Afrikaner refugee program, other than maybe the people working for the government right now. In fact, most of the Afrikaners that I know regard him as the expert on all things with this program. And he's been going around the country talking with different Afrikaner refugees who have come over to the United States. In fact, that's why he's here in Florida with me in studio. Colonel, welcome to the program. Thanks very much for coming.
Well, Alex, it's a distinct pleasure to see you again, and thanks for the invite. I appreciate it. We're on a bit of a time crunch with a flight later on, but you made time for me, and I appreciate it. One thing already I can discuss, you called it the Afrikaner Refugee Program. It's not that. And the South African media and the Western media seem to be intent on continuing to proclaim it as the Afrikaner, or call it the Farmer Program, the Afrikaner farmers. In fact, of the 6,441 people who've come over, only a small number of them actually are farmers. Now, predominantly they're South Africans, white South Africans, but there's also some mixed race or colored South Africans. You know that vernacular from South African Cape Town. It's a distinct ethnic group. And also some Indians have come over because that's another racial minority. And even a few black South Africans have qualified for this program and come to America. For instance, there's a couple of families that I've interviewed who have adopted children who are black Africans, and they're part of their family. They suffer persecution in no small measure because they adopted black children, both from black folks and from white folks. And there are even a few black South Africans who are married to white South Africans who've suffered oppression, so they've come over. And there's also a few other things about the program very quickly. One of the things they talked about is that you couldn't come here if you had a passport from a safe haven country like the United Kingdom or Germany or somewhere like that. But in fact, that's not true. If the primary applicant meets all the qualifications, is an Afrikaner or a racial minority suffering from past persecution or has legitimate fear of future persecution and is in South Africa, then you can come over. I know someone with a German passport, but Germany wouldn't let him take his family to Germany. So he can't go there. It's not an option.
Wow.
So he came over even though he has a German passport.
I bet if he was from Iraq or Syria, he could have gone to Germany.
Oh, yeah. He wouldn't even need a passport. just agree to found a mosque and he'll be good to go. Good Lord.
Preach against freedom and no problem. Come right in.
He might be better off in the, as I'm sorry for folks in the UK, but I'm calling it the Anglo-Celtic Caliphate these days. Yes, it might be safer there.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Chris, I really want to deal with the media talking points because there's been so much misinformation about this. So I want to knock them out. I know we've only got like 10 minutes, but I want to knock them out here real quick. First of all, the fake media from the beginning has been arguing that basically Trump is delusional. There is no problem in South Africa at all. Yeah, there's a lot of crime, but it affects everybody equally. There's no reason in the world why Trump should be concerned about the fate of Afrikaners, except that he is a terrible, evil racist who hates everybody that doesn't have light skin. You've spent a lot of time all over Africa and in South Africa. You know the country inside and out. You know the political system inside and out. What's your assessment? Do Afrikaners have a genuine reason to be concerned? And is it appropriate for the United States under our current refugee and asylum laws to be inviting these folks here?
Well, first off, I've heard that about Trump. I don't really believe it, but I've heard that all over from the New York Times, from media in South Africa. So is it appropriate? Well, this law that we're following now is the Immigration Nationality Act of 1980. It came about, we had a lot of refugees that came after World War II, of course, from Europe, and mostly white Christians. And that's one of the things that gets wrapped up in all of this is the media's lies about what a refugee is. They only think a refugee is a poor black person displaced from a conflict in Africa or starving African or someone from Asia. And that's been the more modern face of refugees. But historically, most refugees that came to this country since the end of the Second World War were white Christian Europeans for a long period of time, up until around 1990. We had a lot of asylum seekers and refugees that came from Eastern Europe because of the Iron Curtain. Hungarians fled, Poles fled, the Baltic population fled. And so this country and Canada were filled up with refugees from white Christian nations for a long time. But that began to change in the 1990s after the Cold War, and the face became something different. So the media is lying about this. I go to South Africa at least twice a year normally and spend several weeks there. I travel all over the country. And I can tell you that over the past 30 years plus I've been traveling to South Africa, things have gotten demonstrably worse. And as far as whether Trump is right or wrong, I'll lay this out there for you. South Africa has 145 race-based laws, more than the apartheid regime did. I mean, that's insane. Why do you need race-based laws? For instance, I was looking at this morning at one of the situations with this broad-based black economic empowerment, which I call black economic enrichment, because it's for a small percentage of the population, not for the masses. And if you don't qualify, you have to give like 100%, anything that's under 20 million rands. That's about what, 1.3 million US dollars for any contract. So if it's to fix the toilets in a building or to do yard maintenance, every single contract under that threshold must be given to a 100% black-owned company. I mean, that's just racism on steroids. And it doesn't uplift poor black people. It impoverishes everybody. And what you get is there's very few 100% black-owned companies. So only a handful of companies can even compete for these contracts, or maybe one. And so they don't have to compete.
And a lot of them are cronies of the ruling party. And,
and so they just charge whatever they want, and the government gets away with it just so they can get the work done. It's those 145 race-based laws is the start of it. But the abuse of South Africans, I mean, we have Julius Malema, the leader of the economic freedom fighters, who's just been convicted a few months ago of discharging a firearm in public. It's a felony. And now he's been sentenced to 5 years in prison, but he's appealing it. And ironically, he sits on the Judicial Services Commission. That's the body that selects judges. Can you imagine that? A convicted felon.
This is a guy who runs around singing "Kill the Boer," you know, we're going to shoot them, and he gets all his frenzied little minions dancing in front of him. It's astounding. And Chris, this is stuff that, you know, back in 2012, I did a cover story on what was happening in South Africa. And the same thing that the media said about Trump, they were saying about us to a much smaller extent. But, oh, you're lying. No, we weren't. We were just giving the facts. There's clearly a problem. I want to move to the next media claim.
Sure.
I've seen a lot of media in South Africa trying to first demonize the folks who are leaving. They're kind of like traitors or whatever. And then also there's this impression that they're trying to create. And I've seen several examples of this where they're trying to make it look like they're arriving here and suddenly their life is miserable. They want to go home. And you've talked to a lot of them who are here. What have you found? Do they want to go home? Are they miserable?
Well, in any program, there's going to be failures. And the reason there's failures is because it's such a large program. The government doesn't actually resettle these people. Private nonprofits normally do it. And most of them claim to be faith-based, but I question their faith. For instance, the Episcopal Church, when Trump announced this, said, we're not doing this anymore because he's letting these white people come over. First off, that's factually wrong. It's not just white people. Second, their argument was, well, we supported Archbishop Desmond Tutu during the anti-apartheid era. And what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Nothing. Nothing. These are people being oppressed, and just like people in the DRC, in the Congo, in Myanmar, the Rohingya, where is their humanity? But the problem is that you have these organizations, from my perspective, that have not had proper oversight from the federal government. It's been going on for decades. Nick Shirley uncovered this Laring Center scandal with the Somalis. I believe I've uncovered an even larger scandal that's been going on for decades of refugee agencies who are defrauding the taxpayer and not delivering services. Wow. The problem with the South Africans is that they mostly speak English well enough, although some of them speak it deliciously. I'm sure you're familiar with that phrase. Oh, yeah. But, or in self-defense only. But they understand English, and they're asking questions that a refugee should ask. For instance, in Tampa, I just discovered that refugees signed for $250 of cash assistance, and then a few days later, we're given a gift card for Walmart for $50.
Oh, wow.
And in the past, if you don't speak English and you're a Muslim and you're afraid you're going to be sent back, and some of these agents actually tell people, well, we'll send you back if you keep making noise. They just don't say anything. They're afraid of going back. And so they've been defrauded for years. They're charging people $800 for delivery of furniture from their limited grant money. Now, that said, it's a small portion of the South Africans this is happening to. I have spoken to more refugees than anyone in the country, and I guarantee that, even more than the government workers, because they're not talking to all these people.
Right.
I've been to Alabama, Idaho, Texas, Las Vegas, New York, all over New York, all over Ohio, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and now I'm down here in Florida, having gone to Orlando, Tampa, and then also Palm Harbor and St. Petersburg. Nobody's done that, and I've met in person about 600 of these 6,000 refugees in person. And I've also interviewed about 60 of them from the whole time this thing has started, including the first interview ever done in South Africa before they even left. The BBC claimed they had the first interview. That's fake news. I had the first interview.
BBC is almost always fake news.
Exactly. So I believe I have better insight in this than most people. It's a small percentage, but as the numbers rise and more refugees coming, we're going to have more cases of this. And it stems from a lack of oversight by the federal government. And the federal government has admitted that to me, that previously it was poor oversight, and they're looking into it. They made some changes to improve the situation, but it's going to take time. And that number will continue to be higher, but the refugee numbers are literally exploding. I mean, last year in the fiscal year, we had 335 came over. We had the proof of concept in May 12th. So it's tomorrow to be a year that the first refugees arrive. Now they have to apply for permanent residency, the green card, tomorrow. And 335 for the fiscal year. And then since then, we've had over 6,000 that have come this fiscal year. There's a cap of 7,000, but I don't think the cap will be applied. The Trump administration supposedly is just going to go past that cap or issue another number. So it is a problem. But as far as people going back, Alex, 4 people have returned to South Africa.
Out of 6,000?
6,400, 441 this year, but 6,700 total. Only 4 have gone back.
Wow. So we're talking a tiny, minuscule, not even close to 1%. I mean, that's amazing.
But it's making huge news because somebody went back.
You'd think that was like the whole story. They're unhappy there.
Well, they all want to go back. They're being treated like crap, and they're all white farmers. None of those things are true.
That's amazing. Chris, I have argued, even before this program began, that Afrikaners would make the best Americans. I've argued, based on my understanding, I used to live in South Africa. I've read more books about South Africa than I can count, that they are the closest cousins to Americans anywhere in the world, even closer than the Brits. I mean, our history has a lot of parallels with the Afrikaners in that we fought against the Brits for freedom. And
so did they, but they lost.
Right, we won, and so praise the Lord, we get our own free country here. But the argument that we're hearing from a lot of the media, from the Episcopalians, these are just racist, mean, yucky people. You don't want them to come to America. In my experience, they're hardworking, generally Christian people, very Western-minded, in the good, in the best sense of that term. What do you think? Are these going to be good Americans? In your opinion, was it a good idea for Donald Trump to allow thousands of these folks into America? Are we going to be a better country or a worse country because they have come here?
Well, I don't think we're going to have any Afrikaans learning schools coming out of this. I'll just say that up front. No, I think they're going to make fantastic Americans by and large. There'll always be a few, useless people in
Bad
every
apples.
cohort. You're going to have that. I mean, look, the people tried last year. An American former service member who married a South African in Dubai and then went to South Africa because he couldn't get her visa because they were recently married to come to America. Eventually got to take her, moved to Virginia. He murdered his wife. And then the Secretary General of the African National Congress, Fikile Mula, I always pronounce his name wrong, but I say Mbalula. But anyway, Fikile actually went and told the press that these refugees are murdering each other. It's not even a refugee. And so that's going to be, that's anything that comes up that's going to be something to talk about. But no, I think they'll make fantastic Americans. Most of them are go-getters. They have drive, the same sort of history that America had with manifest destiny and spreading from one side of the continent to the other and spreading our form of government and governance. I think they'll do very well for the most part. But it's really unfair because I'm coming up against more incidences of racial abuse by majority Americans, white Americans, against white South Africans.
Really?
63-year-old lady in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, walking through a hotel, bothering nobody, but this guy had found out she was from South Africa, so he verbally accosted her in the hallway, called her a white fascist B word.
Oh, whoa!
And screamed at her in the
This is someone
hallway.
who probably watches too much CNN
Or MS Now, what are they call MS LSD, whatever they call themselves these days. And so then also situation
That's terrible. Oh, that's shameful.
We have a case officer in, well, the Tampa St. Peters Bay area. I'll leave it at that so we don't call an agency out. But that case officer is angry because her people can't come here anymore. And it's unfair. The only reason Trump lets you come here is because you're blonde and you have blue eyes. Well, most of the South Africans I met actually don't have blue eyes, so
or blonde hair.
Yeah, we're blonde hair. Well, some of it's bottle blonde, but But the point here is that it's this bigotry and racism directed against South Africans by historically ignorant people that don't know the history. Half the people who've come over are under the age of 32. So the only government they've ever known is the ruling African National Congress.
Yeah.
So how can they be held responsible for the
it.
sins of the past? It's ridiculous. Alex, we both know that one of the great virtues of this country, unlike Europe, has been throughout our history until recently, the sins of your parents or your grandparents, that's not your sin.
All right.
You're judged for as Dr. King said, the content of your character and your actions. But recently we've had leftists and political actors in this country try to tar us with reparations for slavery or blame us for the ills of this country. I've never abused anybody. I'm sure you haven't either.
Nope.
You're a good Christian. Why would you mistreat anyone? But this is a legacy of Europe that's trying to be reactivated here, and they're definitely applying it in South Africa. And to see people accosted or treated like that is just sad to see. And it speaks to the evils of the human heart for people to behave that way.
Yeah, that's shameful. And Americans, if any of you like-minded people like that are watching, be a decent person. That's cruel. These people have gone through some really tough times. Very few people want to just pack up and leave everything behind and move to a new country. It's very unfortunate. Chris, in the last minute that we have, South Africa obviously still in big trouble. You and I were just talking before we went live here that the president seems to be in some hot water now, Ramaphosa. What's the quick update on where South Africa is right now?
Well, frankly, it's sad. It's sad for me to say this. It saddens me is that South Africa's imploded.
Yeah.
They have of the 78 countries that have ocean-going ports, they're ranked 78th in the world by international organization. The corruption is off the charts. Just today, yesterday or the weekend, we had 2 senior police officers, 2-star generals, essentially major generals, in the police arrested for corruption over smuggling gold inside the country. We have an entire commission going on that's identifying police corruption at the highest levels. The political corruption, you can't go a day in South Africa without revealing a new corruption case against a senior member of government. And all of the senior members are implicated, and it's just getting worse. Service delivery is bad, electricity, water, there's not enough water in many places, the roads are falling apart, and crime is off the charts. We have gangster organizations that run the construction industry and the taxi industry, 2 industries that South Africans rely on. The industries are going away. The smelters, there were 19 of them when the ANC took over. There are 2 left. One just shut down. The other's about to shut down. So they won't even be able to smelt steel or iron anymore. It's really sad what's going on here. It's just a matter of time before people really just start taking the streets.
Is it becoming Zimbabwe?
This is going to be worse than Zimbabwe.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be orders of magnitude worse than Zimbabwe if something doesn't change. November 4th, they have municipal elections. It's a chance to change things locally, but not at the national level. It's going to take action by the international community like it did to end apartheid before South Africa begins to turn the corner because the voters aren't doing it.
Wow. Chris, you have a marvelous YouTube channel, very widely followed across Africa, especially South Africa and the South African community in America. How do people follow your work?
Sure, thanks, Alex. My main channel is at Colonel Chris Wyatt, like in Wyatt Earp, WYATT, Colonel Chris Wyatt. And I also have a U.S. focused one, but that's globally. It starts with Africa, and I work around the world, and I cover U.S. news every day, 7 days a week. Noon Eastern Standard Time. It's based on South Africa's time, though. So when daylight savings, it's 11 a.m. But at Colonel Chris Wyatt on YouTube, or my U.S. channel, which is still being shadow banned by YouTube, but they removed it for 22 months, then finally gave it back. My original channel, which is at Real Chris Wyatt. I took a page out of Trump, his ex account, at Real Chris Wyatt. So you can find me in both those places.
Fantastic. Colonel Chris Wyatt, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for the important work that you're doing, and I hope we can talk to you again very soon.
Well, thanks, Alex. A distinct pleasure to see you down here in hot and muggy Florida.
No kidding. All right, folks, thank you for tuning in.